Record. All right. Good morning, everybody. Today's Daf Tzadi. Daf Tzadi. Today's learning should be for a zchus for shlema for Moshe Yitzchak ben Shendel. It's on my WhatsApp. That's why I didn't. Moshe Yitzchak ben Shendel. Should have a for shlema. I got a request. Some have to leave by 7:35, so I will get us out of here by then. All right. So yesterday we left off towards the top. We were discussing the different coins they made, a lug or a quarter. Then we went to a kav. So we got to. All right, you got to turn that off. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines from the top. So we had yesterday a kurtov, and we had a half amount.
Oh.
So we said we had a Tarkov, a Tarkov, and so Tarkov. All right, we go on and then flip it up. Then the screen is off. Right. So we say over there. So Gemara says, why don't you go ahead and make a 2 kav measurement? In other words, we have one that is a chatzi Tarkov. Right, or a Tarkov and a half a Tarkov, which is 3 and 1.5, right? So 3 kav and 1.5. So why don't you make a 2 kav measurement? We have a nami kabayim, 5 lines on the top on Sadi and Aleph. So our answer is Tarkov. It's too confusing if you have a 2 measurement and a 3 measurement. So therefore, it's too confusing. Alma. So what do you see here? So telling Chiatil. So people will be off by a third. In other words, that a third of 3 is, take out subtract that is 2. So Yachi Kav Nami Golavi Dosta Chatzi Tarkov. I understand 1.5 to 2 should be the same thing. So excuse me, 1.5 to 1 should be the same thing, right? You have a 1 measurement, so 3 to 2 would be like 1.5 to 1. So my answer is different teretz, right? So it says Ela Kabayim Hanatam the Asi Lechlufi Bechati Tarkov. No. We're not going to go ahead and confuse the 2 with the 1.5 to 2. Rather, we're going to confuse the 2, right, with the Chati Tarkov, which is the one that's 1.5. 2 is too similar to 1.5. The Alma Ta'inchi Revia. Right, 1.5 to 2 is a quarter. So we see that people would make a mistake for a quarter. So Gemara says, "Ihachi." If that's the case, we also had measurements of chatzi tuma ve'uchla loyabi. We had one over there, a chatzi tuma, which is half an eighth, which is a 16th, and then we said the uchla yesterday at the end of the show. We said which is a 20th. Right, so a 16th and 20th are close in difference. Samara papa midos katanos beki b'hulinchi. When you're measuring things so small, then they're meticulous, and then they don't make such mistakes. So, okay, so let's find bigger stuff. Let's go to Shlish Sahin, Ravi Sahin, right? So what about cases of a third of a hin and a quarter of a hin, right? So those are larger amounts, and we see that those are close, 4 to 3. So cave the happy but mikdash legazarbam. Since those were the shirim of menachos, right, or excluded by the yayin, right? When we say every Rosh Chodesh, right? Every korban, right? Shabbos, right? There's a certain amount of hin, right? That depending on the animal, whether it's a half, a third, a quarter, right? So depending on the animal, so they had different measurements. Why they're going to get confused? It says no. Since the mikdash legozer banan, so Gemara says, "I the mikdash lami gozer." Why don't you go ahead and be gozer there in the mikdash? The Gemara says, "So kohanim reason the kohanim are zaris. So therefore, since they're zaris, they're not going to go ahead and confuse the different measurements between a half a hin, a third of a hin, and a quarter of a hin." 2 dots, smack in the middle of the page. Amar Shmuel ein meisifin alamidah yisim. It's just you don't go ahead and add 2 measurements more than a 1/6. Yes, and also you don't add to the size of a coin more than a 6. A person goes ahead and he sells something for profit. He shouldn't go and also buying and selling for more than a 6. So Masha over here, my Stephen Alamida's Yaisim Shtus. My time, what's the reason? So Mishum Afkui. So if we're saying over here, because in other words, that if they go ahead and add to the measurements, they're going to be worried about inflation, right? They add to the amount, and therefore they're adding to it, and therefore things become pricier. So once it's just Nami, why are you limiting it to more than a sixth? Mashma that a sixth would be okay, right? Yeah, if you change it to six, it could also cause inflation. No, rather wait and say because the halachas of ona of ripping off the havi bittul mekach. In other words, there won't be bittul mekach. Now we know by the case of ona that if it's you rip off the person more than a sixth, it's bittul mekach. If it's exactly a sixth, then the sale still stands, but the guy gets his refund of a sixth. If less than a sixth, then it's nothing. So maybe
if you have monopoly, it's not more than six. If there's competition, it could be.
So we're soon to get we're soon going to get to a little bit of monopolies and controlling the prices. We're soon going to get that. We'll get to those cases, right? There's so Gemara said, "Mishumana Deloy Davi." So Gemara says, "Delavi bitavach." Okay, I've all my Rabba. Rabba says, "Kol davar shebamido v'mishkav minan afilu pachas mikdeo na chayzer." Right? If a person doesn't know the new size and he's doing it, and even though it's a sixth, right? So the sale isn't valid because Rabba said if something is by measurement, and I'm thinking you're talking about these pounds, but it's different pounds or whatever it is, right? So then, even if it's less than no, right? You gave a certain standard, and it's not that standard. So it's even if it's less than a sixth. Ella to like the So in other words, it shouldn't be lost to the owner. He shouldn't lose the merchant selling. If he sells something, assuming it's the old and it's worth the new, and he's really selling more than he thought. So he says, I understand. So we're just worried about him losing his principal. We're not worried about him not making a little bit of profit. I understand. Right? What he's for him, if he loses out on his profit, we're okay with that. But why else is he a merchant? He's not a merchant just to call himself a merchant. He's merchants to make a profit. We have to make sure that they're profitable. They're able to go ahead and have a livelihood. So Shmuel Kra Ashkach V'Dar. She actually found the pasuk. The pasuk says V'Shekel Esrim Gera, right? And the shekel is worth 20 gera. And Esrim Shekalim, Chamisha V'Esrim Shekalim, Asara V'Chamisha Shekel Hamana Yelachem. So basically, the Gemara is we'll soon explain the pasuk over there. It says a mana is, let me get the order right. Right is 20, 25, and 15 shekel. And I was combine the three. It's 20, 25, and 15. Right, 60. So then basically 60 shekalim to a mana. Okay. Now, what's going on there? We know mana is really less, right? And mana is really the standard is 25, right? Because it's 4-1. So it really would be 25 times 4 is a mana would be 100. So that's what the right. So the Gemara says. Turn the page. So mana, Masav Arbin, how do you understand? Is a mana 240? Because over here is 60. Right? If you do 60 shkalim, which is each one a shekel is 4 dinarim, is 200. So 60 times 4 is 240.
40 dinar.
So 240 dinar. So manama sign by have you? Elish mamino look for three things. First of all, because really I always thought that mana was 100 dinarim, right? Not 240. So where's this 240 coming from? Elish mamino plus look for three things. Shmami no learn from here. First of all, mana shel kaidesh kaful hayim. The mana of this time of hekdesh, and the hekdesh manas were doubled. So instead of being 25, which should be 100, like that's what we said before, it's 50, right? Which is 200. Also, shmamina mosino lamidos, right? You can add to the measurements. In other words, they seek to add to the measurements. It went from basically 50, right? Which we just said double 25 is 50 to 60, right? Because it was 60 there. We said 20 plus 25 plus 15 is a total of 60. So therefore, 60, they made it from 50 to 60, and 60 is 240. So it went from 200 dinarim to 240 dinarim. So we can learn from over there that we might add a 6, and also shmamina shtusa milabar. The shtus is the 6th is from the outside. In other words, that is a 1/6 of the total amount. In other words, you take basically, you don't take a 1/6 of the original principal and add a 6. Rather, it's a 1/5 of there, and you add a 1/5 on to the original amount. So a 1/5 of 200 is 40. Add 40 to the 200. It's now 240, and therefore that's where I got 240, and 240 is 60 shkalim, and that's what it meant over there. So in other words, Shmuel learned that you can add to the coin by 1/6, and that's how it went from 50 to 60. Fine. Amar, excuse me, Rav Papa Bar Shmuel talking Talia Bar Pasan Kafisi. So he went ahead and masakin a coin that was 3 kafisi, and 3 kafisi is 9 lugan. So Amrulay, Amar Shmuel, Sivin Alamida is Yasimishtas, right? And before it was 6, and now you're creating a new one that's 9. So I don't understand. How can you change this standard from 6 to 9? You're jumping up more than a 6. You're jumping up half of it, or a third, if you do it from the outside, right? So you have to do this. Right? No, there's a new coin. Don't say this is different, that I'm changing, making it larger. This is a new coin. So Shadda Pumadisa, like Kevlua, right? He sent to Pumadisa. They didn't want to go ahead and use his new measurement. However, Shadja La Pupanaya, he sent it to Pumanaya, I guess another suburb over there, Kevlua, and they used it Vikarle, Ruse Papa. They called it basically the measurement of Papa. Fine, let's get the parentheses as Simanim. Tell you what's coming up next.
Beautiful, Rabbi. Stunning.
All right, Tana Rabbanan. All right, got 9 minutes. I'd say payros, right? Those who go ahead and hoard payros, they stockpile payros in order basically to control the market later on, right? They want to use it. In other words, all of a sudden the supply is depleted, and all of a sudden he has the supply and he, sells it for a very high. So I'd say payros. What? Oh, they do that? Malavi ribis. And just make fake ones now. And those who lend on interest, and those people that basically make the sizes smaller, right? They make the sizes smaller. I'll sell you a pound, and then a pound is always $1, right? And soon the pounds get smaller, but it's still $1, right? So those people who make the measurement small, Mafkiya Sharim, and all those people who distort the prices, Aleina Kasav about them, the pasuk says, Aimer. Now comes a sort of a lengthy pasuk. It says over there, right? When the people say, "Oh, when will this, the month end?" and then we can basically bring out the produce. I.e., these people are hoarding produce, right? Or the year, the sabbatical, right? When the land is, fallow. And there's no crops, and then they're going to produce the crops to get higher prices. Lahaktin Eifa, right, to minimize the Eifa, Lahagdil Shekel, and to increase our shekel by basically lending it out with interest. Lavas Mazne Mirma, and also to go ahead and use scales of falsehood, of deceit, of Mirma. And it says over there, Ksiv Nishba Hashem Begon Yaakov Meshkach, right? Lanasa Kol Maaseh. So it says basically that Hashem will not, forever their deeds will remember. So all these people, those who try to distort prices, lend an interest, stockpile produce in order for the markets will go up, right? Minimize the supply. All those people, Hashem will remember. So Eitze Peros Kigain man. So who's Eitze Peros? So I'm Rabbi Yechon Kigain. Shopsite Eitze Peros, right? Like Shopsite Eitze Peros, he used to go ahead and I guess he would stockpile Peros, and such a person in order to gain advantage later on and sell for higher prices. And Avu the Shmuel Mazavanu Lepere Betare Charafa Ketare Charafa. He would go ahead. The father of Shmuel would go ahead in the beginning of the market and sell for very cheap. You want to get the poor people to be able to buy, so he would make sure to go to the market early and sell cheaply. And so and Shmuel Beret, and what would Shmuel do? Shmuel Beret, Mashi the Pere Mazavi, he would hold on to the fruits later on. Mazavi Lu Batara Alpha Katara Charfa. He will go ahead and hold on later on in order for the poor people to be able to buy later on for the cheap prices. So he did opposite. He held on to it, but for the purposes of selling cheaper and not to make more profit at the end. The Shalchim, he told him, he said, Tova the Abba Midbara. The father's actions were actually greater or more significant than the sons, than Shmuel's. My time, most reason. Because the price, basically in the beginning, sets the standard. If the first price would have been high, then the prices only would have been worse. But since the prices started very low, therefore the market remained low for the entire season, and therefore that was why the blessing or the effectiveness of Shmuel's father was greater than his. And Amar Rav Isa Adam as Kava Isa. A person's allowed to go ahead and make for himself, right? He's one merchant, he's one farmer, he only has one field. He's allowed to go ahead and make for himself. He wants to go ahead and stockpile stuff and not use it. That's okay. At that which we say you can't go ahead and stockpile fruits. That's things that people need to survive, such as yainas, shmanim, salatais, wines and oils and flour, about tavlin, kamuna pilplin, but let's say different spices as cumin and peppers, mutter, that is mutter to go ahead and store. And what are you talking about? This is when you're buying from the market. You can't buy from the market, like buy all these wines and then put it in my cellar, right? It's a aval, the machnis, mutter, but you have a vineyard, you want to go ahead and bring it inside, that's fine. You just can't go ahead and basically buy out the competition and then stockpile it for later on, then to create a monopoly or something on the market. But you want to hold on to your own, that is a mutter. It's a pears, Eretz Yisrael. And a person's also allowed to go ahead and stockpile pears in Eretz Yisrael. Gimel Shanim for 3 years, which 3 years, Erev Shvis, before Shemitah, because he has to hold on for during Shemitah, Shvis, Umatzi Shemitah. And also the year before, year 6, 7, year 8, right, when the new crops are growing, therefore you're allowed to go ahead and stockpile because at some point, fruits will need to be used then. However, however, years of famine, afilu kav charubin lo yatzer. Even one kav of carobs, a person should not go ahead and stockpile because it basically will wreak havoc upon the prices. Right? It's so sensitive. And Amar Rabbi Yosef so Rabbi Yosef told Puga, his assistant, go ahead and collect for me. Let's start stockpiling fruits for 3 years. At which 3 years, Erev Shvis, right? The year before Shemitah, during Shemitah, and the year after Shemitah. So Taner Rabban, 3 lands in the bottom, a person cannot go ahead and take out fruits from Eretz Yisrael. And this is referring to what? This is referring to things that I need to sustain life. For instance, wines and oils and flowers. However, if you do he says, you know what? You want to export wine from Eretz Yisrael? Great. Why? Right? Because wine, causes misbehavior, right? Intoxication, and perhaps bad things. So therefore, you know what? We have less wine in Eretz Yisrael. Not a big deal. And just so we don't go ahead and take it from Eretz Yisrael. So that we don't go ahead and take a Surya. However, the Rebbe Mater, Rebbe permitted from right, from one state to another, even from Eretz Yisrael to give us right, even from one province to another, and from Eretz Yisrael to Syria, because they are close to one another. And one more Taner Rabbanan will come over lines. So Taner Rabbanan, a person should not go ahead and make a living, right? Become wealthy upon trading these things that are chaynavish, for instance, wines and oils and flowers. It should make them, it should provide them for people, not necessarily for a business. However, he would actually go ahead and he did business with wines and oils and Eretz. And Bayayin, what's the reason why? Bayayin, Savak Rabbi Yehuda, holds like Rabbi Yehuda. In other words, it's good to go ahead and sell wine and get them out. And B'Shemin, when it comes to oil, he was able to go ahead and sell the oils because where he lived, there was plenty of oil, and there was no need of him. There was no concern of him controlling the markets, and therefore he's able to go ahead and buy and sell. It wouldn't drive the prices up. All right, we'll stop here. Shkayach, everybody. Everybody have a wonderful day. And 7.